My name is Ken Aston. I wrote a microbiome prescription website, and this is what hopefully will be a new tradition with me, which is whenever I add changes, there will be a link on the page to a video explaining what the changes are, how to make use of it. Videos will be short, hopefully, and you can run for it. And what I want to do is go in and show you the profile page again. This replaces the old video. The first thing is we have an overview. We have the health analysis, which goes in, indicates potential medical conditions using clinical studies from the U.S. Library of Medicine, which is the basis of the selection. Next is the listing of bacteria which one or another source linked to from here indicates that is it pathogenic or not a good one to have. Dr. Harlick's suggestions, which there's links here for more information. So that's the first part there. But let's go back and see what was added. Just right here is what has been added. Is the percentile of number of bacteria you have in each percentile range. In a beautiful world, you would expect 10% in the bottom 10%, 10% in the next 10%, etc., etc., etc. That is a representative of everybody's microbiome. Now, what I've done is I've gone and count by genus and by species, which are the two lowest level. And the main purpose of that is to show whether or not you are typical or atypical in terms of your microbiome. In theory, all these numbers should be about the same, going up and down. Here we notice these numbers are a bit lower than the rest of them, and these numbers are a bit higher, which means that this person has more of the common bacteria than actually most people do, slightly more, which is a good thing. And then as species, we see the same thing. As the percentile goes up, the number of reports goes up. So that indicates sort of somebody with a more normal one. Now let's go over from John Doe to Mary Smith. And Mary Smith, we see something has changed. What do we have? The ones which are 50 percentile and below are much higher than the ones above it. In other words, Mary Smith has a lot more rare bacteria because she's underrepresented with the ones that occurs with a low percentile of being seen. So that indicates she is atypical. She has a lot more rare bacteria. Rare bacteria can be a challenge. Why? Because we don't know that much about it. There are ways around that, but that's a different discussion. Okay, then we go over to a visualization, which shows the microbiome tree. And that's very straightforward. You can go and adjust whatever you want to filter by. And that filtering basically affects only what is highlighted here. In other words, it determines one thing. Everything else stays the same. The percentile ranking of it, the ranges, expected year value, etc., species, all the usual stuff. We have pie charts, which indicates things at different levels. So if you go down to species level, you see there, and we notice this big 43% of John Doe's are unknown species. That's a good number of unknown species. Let's go flip over to biome site. And we had 48%, oops, sorry. Let's go back to species. And we have less unknown and more which are identified. And we can see some which are particularly high percentage at the species level. And something is high at species level, like either one of those two. You may want to do a bit of investigating. The Faecobacterium Percentiles is generally viewed to be healthy, but this one is not one which I usually see, which indicates that this particular species could be a significant factor for your health issues. Okay, and last one is chronocharts, which basically allows you to go in and pick an area, double click it, oops, and now it will drill down into it, and you can see what's going on, and you can see percentage of different type, or you can see the structure where you're going into the bacterial hierarchy here. So let's go back. Special reports for MD. We go in and we see things there. So for there, and I see something else. We see one particular combination, and then there should have been a changing microbiome ID here. Something went wrong. I'll see about fixing that one. Regulars for MDs, and same thing. And you can now download the sample, which is basically for those who are wanting to work offline, and you basically go in and say, okay, which format do you want? And now you decide what data you want into the download, how you want it ordered, counts, etc. Which ones do you want? So that gives you ability to export if you're wanting to track it in your own Excel spreadsheet separate from the website. Some people do. Targeted suggestions is a lookup tool which allows you to look at one particular thing, particularly items which are not on your suggestion list, because remember we limited to 30 or 40 items in the suggestion list usually, and this allows you to see if something you are taking or something you're suggesting is likely to be good or bad. Then we have the KKiller, which is working purely off your DNA, the DNA of your microbiome sample, and the DNA of the various probiotics. And you can go and see what the suggestions are. And there we have suggestions, ranked order, etc. And same with supplements. And then you have the ability to share your settings, as in share it to one of our known consultants, which needs to be increased. I have some more in the list, but I haven't entered them there yet. Or you can type in a specific email somebody you share with. They don't have to be a consultant. They can be just the email of a medical professional or whoever else you want to share the information with, and that does it, and then you can remove it if you wish. So that takes us right through the page with the update. Main update is this item, and you can see that it's going to be helpful to see whether or not you are shifted towards rare bacteria or common bacteria. I flipped over to a different user, and you can see with this user, you can see very dramatic. The very rare ones have a good high count for both at the genus and the species level. So it can be very informative looking at the numbers and say, well, what? I have a whole bunch of rare bacteria. And those rare bacteria are likely not being looked at by professionals because they are looking at what is reported in the literature, which are the common ones, and particularly the ones which are up here in this percentage of things. And here's another case where we see numbers are very good. This comes from a blog which I actually have done, and you can see the son who has autism. You can see the high percentage of rare bacteria here, and then the common ones actually tend to be very sparse. Or the daughter who has a similar characteristic, but the very common ones, they tend to be deficient at. So again, just additional ways of looking at it. Remember, one of the key aspects is if you look at that and you go over here and look at the species level, you can see in this case just about everybody's accounted for with only a small percentage there. Very varied, a lot of activity there. And over to species. Again, another one. And you can see the scattering. And let's go back and check them over. And species level again. Again, we have all sorts of things there. And we have our unknown being just 3.2%. So a lot of things are showing up there. There's no percentage here, maybe because of the lab they were using, which, if I remember right, was Cosmos ID. Part of the issue is that sometimes they quote normalize, they hide the percentage of unknown. So that's something which is a nightmare. But so much for the good news. Let's end it, and